So how do I stop absorbing other people's emotions? You know, have you ever come home and you're probably feeling in a good space, maybe you're relaxed and your spouse or your kids are in some sort of emotional state and you just feel yourself being dragged into that? That's what I want to address today on Upgrade Me. Join me. People's emotions are difficult to resist. You know, anyone who's hanging around with people is going to experience a constant sense of being dragged in or tracked into somebody else's emotional state, and often it's a negative emotional state. And obviously we're not too worried about being dragged into someone's happy state. Just the other day when I was teaching, I had a student walk out angry, and her friends said to me, "Oh, what are you going to do now that you've made her angry?" And you know, that's just sort of sums up a human response to others' emotions. We say, "You made me angry," you know, and that is actually a misunderstanding of how emotions work, isn't it? So what I said to the students in that moment was, "Hey, I didn't make her angry. She got angry all by herself," and that's a really important lesson to learn when you're dealing with other people's emotions. It's an obvious truth when you reflect on it that you actually don't have control over another person's emotional state at all. You only have control over your own emotions. Their emotions are theirs. If you do feel like that you're responsible for their emotions, you're going to feel trapped by their emotional state and have two responses. One of them is to run away, shut down, run away, and the other is to try and manipulate them so that they stop feeling it, because you can't stand it any longer. It's exhausting. In an article I wrote a few weeks ago, "How do I stop worrying about what people think of me?" I talked about the concept of individuation. And individuation, once again, is a really important concept to understand when you're dealing with other people's emotional space. We're not individuated. We're basically struggling to find the difference between where my emotional space stops and their emotional space starts. We actually think their emotional state is our emotional state, and that drags us into a false sense of responsibility for them. To the extent that you are unable to differentiate between your spouse or your friends or your children's emotional space, that is how much you're going to be dragged into their emotional world. And this is undifferentiation, and the cause of this sort of sense of being absorbed into other people's emotional states, which is so destructive to relationships. You know, don't you think it's hard enough to keep your own emotional state in a good, peaceful place without adding the burden of everybody else's that you interact with through life? Often we think we need to be responsible for other people's emotions because that's compassion and that's empathy. But I want to try and clarify those two things. Compassion and empathy are wonderful things, but when we take responsibility for other people's emotions that we can't change, we actually stop being compassionate and empathetic when we become manipulative, or we become a stonewall because we just can't handle it. Emotion and compassion are very, very important human emotions that we need to guard and protect. And they do run out. You know, if we keep on being drained emotionally because we're sucked into other people's emotional states, our compassion levels drop until they get dry, and then we just cut everyone off. You know, we want to go and live in some cabin somewhere in the mountains with nobody around because we're just so sick of people's stuff, you know. And this process of differentiation is really the thing that you need to go through. I realise that my emotions are totally within my control. Now, most of us will go, "No, they're not. Emotions are just happening to me all the time and there's nothing I can do about them." And that's not the truth. That is a learnt, automatic, unconscious response that you have to emotions, thinking that they are totally just happening. Emotions come from thinking, and thinking is totally under your control. Your emotional state is your responsibility. The other person's emotional state and their response to you and how you're being in your authentic state isn't something you control. That is within their control. The sooner you can understand that, the sooner you can guard compassion and empathy, and you can respond to people in a more authentic way, in a way that brings compassion, brings love, brings healing into their lives. I'm not saying to cut people off. I'm saying this is how you stop getting to a place where you want to cut people off. Next time you start to feel swamped by somebody's emotional response, ask yourself the question, can I actually change the way they're feeling right now? If you'll realise pretty quick that you can't. You can't change the way they're feeling about your response. If you do take responsibility for their responses, what you're going to do is you're going to start manipulating the way that you respond to that person. You're going to withhold certain information because you're afraid of the response that they're going to have, because when they have that response, which may be pain, you'll feel that pain as if it's your own. And this causes an inauthenticity to relationship. If you start withholding relationship from someone that's close to you because you're afraid of their emotional response, you're going to lose trust and you're going to lose intimacy, which are two things that are absolutely crucial to a healthy relationship. One way to help you understand why we have this response is these mirror neurons that we've discovered that humans have. Within our brain, we have mirror neurons. These actually pick up the sense, they pick up the facial triggers, and like smiles or sadness or stress, and we interpret those, and they go into these mirror neurons, and those mirror neurons actually cause the emotional response to happen within us. So for example, if you see someone smile, you are going to instantly start to mirror the smile on your own face, and you'll even feel an echo of the happiness that may be being expressed that you're interpreting from them. Now, just because you think that is the feeling they're having doesn't mean that's what's going on, but that is the feeling you'll have. If you see someone sad, if you see someone crying, you will have an emotional response that's similar, that mirrors that. Now, this is the source of all empathy, compassion. This is a wonderful human attribute you want to protect. The problem is when you see sadness or when you see anxiety and the feeling starts to rise in you, and you can't tell the difference between that feeling, mirrored feeling, and your own. You actually think, that is my feeling, I am sad now because they're sad. Then you start to struggle because you can't go around carrying the whole world's emotional response. You can't go around carrying everybody's pain. That's just going to burn you out. You need to be able to discern, this is my emotional space, that's theirs. They're feeling sad right now, but that's not my sadness. Then you can respond with empathy, you can respond with listening, you can respond with comfort. But it's no longer your pain, it's you coming from a peaceful place and sharing with them, healing them. You can't go walking around mirroring everybody's anxiety and fear and then hope to help anybody, because you're drowning just like them. It's like a good example, I suppose, is if you're seeing someone drown, you don't jump in the water with them from the boat, you drag them back into the boat. It's the same with you. If you're seeing someone sad, don't jump into the water and start drowning with them. I understand that you're sad. I'm not sad right now, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to help and be there for you. Mantra that I use a lot when I see people in emotional pain and I start to feel myself being sucked into this emotional world of theirs is that I'm not responsible for others' feelings. And that can sound harsh and cold, but it's not, because that's the truth. I'm not responsible because I have no power over their feelings. I'm not responsible for others' feelings. Gives me relief from that emotional mirroring, that emotional empathy that I'm feeling. And then I can come back and go, you know, what's going on? How can I help? How can I listen if I'm able to do that? So what are you going to do today when you start feeling yourself sucked into people's emotions? Are you going to jump in with them, or are you going to try and help them get back into the boat?